Hello, welcome to an update on my final major project, Condemned Souls of the Veil. In my last video I discussed about where the project kicked off from 6 months onwards, as there was a lot of stuff got in the way, and in my previous video I covered a pitch document just to give an update in terms of how the idea of the game itself came about and why it's going to be made into my final major project. This time in this video I'm going through and showcasing the updates as to where I'm at currently. So last I spoke I was currently meant to be in the halfway through my second out of 3 milestones, and unfortunately, as project planning goes in terms of the pipeline of development, it hasn't gone swiftly as planned, but all the same there's been major progress in terms of functionality and playability. I'm very happy to announce that my 1 out of 3 core mechanics for this game that I covered back in the previous video, Polaroid mechanic, is fully working to its standards, and it just needs to be attached to the other mechanics to ensure the full game flow and playability mode. So basically what I've done is created a Polaroid mechanic for the game where you interact with the objects, and last time when I showcased the project it had the examine system just to set up the basic template of examining objects in a player socket, and I'm going to be going through the overall camera mechanics as well. So ideally, obviously, the story in the background is that my character is a photography student, so I wanted to have something a bit more interactive and as like a companion in the game that you could use to interact with the objects for environmental storytelling. That will take further place once I've added much more objects to build up the story of the character, because this is basically unveiling the character, like as in the name Condemned Souls of the Veil. You are unveiling what the story is in regards to the depression and how the character has been led down the path of accepting they've got depression or not. So with regards to the playability at the moment, I've got the working camera, and I did start an email system that I will be going over in the next few days or so just to get that up to date, as well as sorting out the win and lose state for the ending scenario where you're in the demon realm. That is still currently undergoing development, but that will not take as long as the Polaroid did. I did go through a few stages which will be covered in my blog as well, so I'll be updating that with exemplar videos of my Polaroid updates, but this is the overall update. I have tested this in a build, but I'd rather do it in the editor just to get a better overview and how the mechanics came about, and also going through the script a bit more. So without further ado, I will go through the Polaroid mechanics. So obviously you start with pressing play, where you land in the main part of the bedroom, and I have been toying around with the camera, so it's a lot much smoother now, so you don't have so much jiggery as well, and the speed was a bit insane, and I had a lot of collision problems at the start, so now I don't go colliding everywhere. So I've got 2 modes of the camera. Basically it's called free cam mode and examine mode Polaroid. The first stage of the Polaroid is that you can just take photos freely, just give it like an additional function for the player to just have fun with as well, because you know you're a photography student, you want to have fun with your camera now and then, just sort of taking a free snap basically. So at the moment when you would press left click you could obviously take a photo, but you can't unless you toggle the function. So I worked out how to toggle it by using, at the moment it's just tab, which will change because tab is usually pause controls in PC games. So essentially tab function enables the camera lens to initialize Polaroid mode, and this will be the same when you go into examine mode on the actual object to interact with. Instead of babbling on about that, I'll just sort of demonstrate how this was interact. So say I wanted to take a photo of the wardrobe, and here we have an instant photo of the Polaroid which demonstrated a flash animation of printing off and disappearing on the screen. So basically this is just free mode. It doesn't mean that the photo is going to save, because these aren't essential and unique items to relate to the player's story. So this is just generally a free camera mode, so you can take loads of photos if you wanted, and they won't actually appear anywhere because this is just for fun. It will only work when the lens is active, so you keep clicking, and obviously when you go back to toggling you can take the photo. So there's the photo of the bed again. Essentially, so you turn that off and that is just free camera mode. I can even take a photo of myself in the mirror. Obviously I'm just a capsule at the moment, but that's taking a photo of myself, so there you go, adding that to the metaphorical album that doesn't actually exist. But obviously going into the other camera mode, and I had to do a lot of toying around with code to make sure both of these don't systems don't clash, because free mode enables you to take the photo and examine mode is the significant photos that will end up on the detective wall. Now the detective wall is going to be demonstrated over here where the objects will appear, for you to build up the character's profile and relate back to the player. And there's also linked with the email system and also the triggering events of the mirror, which will be the entry to the demon world, hence why I have the mirror. And at first it was all just experimentation with reflective probe and just seeing what I can do with it, but I want to introduce the other scene coming through to this world, that there's something reaching out, calling to the player, that events are starting to happen when they're building up the story, basically putting the puzzle together. So essentially what happens with this is you will go over to the object as instructed. Essentially it just comes up with the little icon interaction, disappears when you don't go onto it. So you've got item, which has come up with item description as well. I've just named it thing for now. It's not essentially what the overall project, the object is going to be, because I've still got to just do a few bit of designs and 3D modeling software with Blender to actually put the story elements together. So say this would be a bit of paper or a bottle or something that's relevant to the player. So at the moment you can just view the object. You can also zoom in on the scroll wheel, and you can zoom back out like if you were zooming in on the camera as well. You can only do this in Polaroid mode, not free camera, because free camera is just taking a photo instantly. It's not as essential as this mechanic. So also going back and pressing right click, you're out of examine mode, and it sends the photo, it sends the object back to its original position, as well as zooming out, so like you never left. Also you cannot move when you are in examine mode, and I'm stressing to make sure that doesn't happen, which is good. So obviously clicking on and off. Essentially then you go to press tab again, which is the current functionality, and you've got examine mode switch to Polaroid mode, where you can still zoom in, and if you right click nothing happens still. I did have a problem where you'd click back on with the UI active and it would take a photo instantly, and that doesn't help. So I've managed to solve that, and now without further ado, let's demonstrate taking the photo. So we get a close up of the photo itself, take the photo, demonstrates it there, prints down, and what you'll see behind me is a copy of the photo printed onto the start of a detective wall. Now the detective will start adding more photos as you take each photo of the significant items, and that is a smaller version of the item I just took a photo of, and it's also carried the name of the item description onto the Polaroid to demonstrate that's what the name of the item was. So each time you find the item set as bottle, it will go back to that. And obviously you don't really need to take a photo of this, but you know, this is still a functionality to work upon, but the main thing is the basics work, and that's what matters. I will also just demonstrate that you can put the item back, and it's the same thing. It's basically just screenshotted the render texture onto a quad, which is also represented onto a cube, because I did not have the current knowledge or skill to make a quick Polaroid print, so I thought I'd just add this onto as a texture on a quad, because obviously it's one side, and if you look on the back there is no reflection, it's just a flat base, which works essentially for the Polaroid. It looks exactly like the Polaroid you just taken, so it's like you just stuck it onto the wall, and it also works with other photos. So that means when I took a photo of this one, I did have a problem where it would duplicate, so that the same capture would end up on each photo. It would get rid of my old photos, which was very frustrating, but I'm happy to say that these two photos are completely different. That is the left hand side of the desk, and that is the right hand side of the desk. And that one didn't have a description because it was just a dummy object. Whereas for example we go into the kitchen and we can go onto the knife that I have used before, and it says knife essentially. You can zoom in and get like a nice shot of the sharp blade essentially. Do that, which will take you over to back onto the wall, where we have a third image that demonstrates the knife, and that still has the same description, and it doesn't get rid of anything with the previous Polaroids, which is great. And I will also be experimenting on certain events taking place using the spawn system I have. So each spawn point will contain the printed photo each time you take a photo of the object, and that will enable me to trigger how the demon realm works, and also add additional emails onto the email system that will assist the player in basically like a help tool and what to do. So essentially that's where I'm at the moment with the Polaroid mechanics, and I will go over the code a little bit just to give a bit of a download in terms of how the functionality works. So that's coming out of that mode. I'll explain a bit more about the Unity side. So in regards to the actual mechanics, we've got the player's camera that contains camera script and also Polaroid, which is a very long script that basically carries out all the necessary functions for the Polaroid to work. This involves the free camera mode, the examining the animations, the sound, the viewing of the Polaroid, capturing of it, and the flash itself as well, and also the spawn points it carries. So at the moment I've got it set to 6 in this area here, which means that there's 6 photos to take of, and there won't be any more after that. So I'm thinking about adopting 6 items that are essential for the game to progress, and once you've got all 6 items, that will build up the story profile with the chain of events from the players past and take you over to the demon round to face the demon, and whether or not to decide through the input box system and the win and lose state of accepting or denying depression. And I look forward to introducing my ending scenario, mainly obviously the one where you accept depression, because that will change the side of the game into enlightenment and looking for support. Also to raise awareness, because it's based first to core slices to also answer my research question, which I will happily go back over in my blog, because I've already covered it before, but obviously this is now the practicalities, making it physically come to life. But essentially also going back over, we have my first start that I tried with the camera. I followed a YouTube tutorial from SpeedTutor, which enabled me to have a Polaroid capture by clicking, and then I updated this with a mixture of my own code with the Examine system to make it into a fully fledged Polaroid system with saved Polaroid photos that print on via screen capture to render texture. So this is what I started off with at first, and I thought, okay, if I can make this work out of my own mechanics and then import this and edit it, I can add free camera mode, which enables the player to take photos freely instead of essential objects, because otherwise that'd be pointless having a whole camera system without having to input a little bit of fun into it. So going back over to the UI, basically the UI is on a Polaroid here. So these are the spawn points that I spoke about here on the wall. They are basically 6 spawn points where the Polaroids will appear. Item name is basically what the text comes up with every time I click on the items in Examine mode to demonstrate what the name of the item is. I've attached with each item, also I can demonstrate with just the prefab I have, Polaroid prefab, which has an item attached called script, which has item name. So every time I attach this script to an item, I can input the item name, and that will be what it comes up with when displaying the item in an Examine mode on the player socket. Obviously you've got the player UI, which is set to false, so that is the camera lens at the moment. It's not that far, it just looks quite zoomed out essentially, and then you've actually got the Polaroid frame background, which is what will appear each time when you demonstrate the Polaroid showing after you've captured it. I think it's a nice game flow as well, the fact that it flashes and demonstrates the photo like you would have to print it or shake it around like original Polaroid cameras. I think it gives like a nice realistic impression to how interactive the objects will be in terms of the game world as well, and also that they instantiate, meaning like import onto the wall to make it feel like you actually printed something off and attached it to the wall to make up, you know, a detective story. Essentially that's what the general Polaroid mechanics work. And I did also start a email system that I'm still currently working on. I don't know if it's offline, but I will just have a check and see. So you go over to the computer, and it comes up with computer, and you can press this, so this will just display the overall panel for your computer. It has logouts and it has email, so you press email and email system will pop up. I'm still toying around and working on it, so you would press email 1 and scroll down essentially, and it would show you the help tool, and also relate to the player's actual object they've just taken a photo of, because obviously I was experimenting with spawn points, take photo 1, send an email, etc. That's what will happen eventually. Also you can close down the tab and then open up the email. The email's not showing, but it was just to demonstrate the mechanics and how it would work. UI is quite fiddly, and also it can't really help when looking into scripts because it has to be all UI text based with buttons and text in code, so that will be something to go over. But essentially you could press the logout button and then I'm logged out of the computer, but at the same time I have my camera frozen on the x-axis, and I cannot, oh no, my camera's completely frozen on all axes and I can't move it around. But apart from that, the email system will be coming along shortly, so that's my next thing to work on, considering the Polaroid's out of the way. But obviously I'll just go over the code a little bit just to give an update in terms of where we're at from there. So this is the long Polaroid script that I've edited, using a mixture of online source and refined code of my own. Basically I have got the update function where you interrupt the item, so you press click to interrupt the object, and then you would go into Examine mode. So in Examine mode you have the option to obviously view basically examine the item or take a photo, and this will only work if you, like I said, you press the toggle button for the lens to pop up to initiate taking a photo of the camera. It's like you're lining up the lens to, have focus and take a photo. On examine, this is enabling you to rotate the object, look at it more, also scrolling into the object as well with the mouse view, just to indicate that you can get closer like you would on the camera. And then obviously you've got right click to exit examine mode, which takes everything back to its previous parameters, and the transforms back to 0 where they were originally based in their position. And then this is the tab function that I will simply just change by writing whatever key it will be instead, but essentially the examination and the Polaroid works all accordingly as planned. And then you've got these methods called pick up item and drop item, which is essentially what happens when you're interacting with the objects. Instantiating Polaroid is creating that Polaroid capture when the photo appears, plus adding it onto the wall as it goes through the process. This was in a bigger chunk in capturing Polaroid coroutine, but now this has been cut down because it made a lot more sense and readability to instantiate the photo. Also, capturing photo is a different method, so capture photo enables you to print with the sound and everything, also adding the transform onto text, but also I needed to send the screen capture onto a prefab to enable it to be on the detectable in a physical object. Otherwise it would be 2D and you wouldn't be able to see it because it's all UI based. And then obviously remove Polaroid is essentially just getting rid of the Polaroid afterwards. So you show the Polaroid and get rid of the sprite afterwards. And then you've got the flash effect that just takes place to press play, and it's like using light as well. Here I'm just starting to experiment with different events of spawn points. So say you've taken photo 1 or 3, not going to randomize it because it's easier to just do essential like maybe 2, 4, 6, just to give that sort of step-by-step synchronization of the Polaroids reacting to the player and then entering the mirror effects to trigger the demon world. So essentially that is the main mechanic of the Polaroid. I'm trying to cut down the code, but essentially it's, with the vertical slice version, it's not a sense of much data because it's all happening effectively in update and every frame per second. And it's, as always, it's always something like a new line of code to fix around and play around with. Essentially, FreeCam is the same script but without the extras like adding the Polaroid prefab onto the wall, so that essentially works. Item just holds the item name, and I can reference that from the other one. Like I said, add this script to any item and you'll be able to add a name to it and it will display that. And player camera has just been updated with adding a smooth option to enable less jiggeriness and problems with in terms of sensitivity, because you'd have to move your mouse like 200 times faster, and even in the build it would be a bit crazy. So now it's smoother using time and delta time and camera smooth. And then Polaroid camera is what I first attempted with, just to test if Polaroid could be printed out. But yes, essentially that is the update as for now. I will be currently working on the email and input system for the dialogue, which enables me to create a smaller, different scene to represent the demon realm. Let me just get zooming in on my player. There we go. So essentially be this sort of size, going into the demon realm, like the bedroom, but you will not have character movement or camera control. It will just be facing the character with the character be facing first person to a character model as the demon. So it's a demonized version of the player, involving text box based dialogue to answer questions, and this will assist a lot more because I did in previous modules of this course apply a text based true or false sort of reflection game, and that will follow the same functionality but with a user interface. So it will sort of co-line together anyway in the end, which is a better outcome I can hope for this project. So the clock is ticking on this, I'm not going to lie, but I'm confident enough that I've come this far with the Polaroid mechanic that it works smoothly and its playability is perfect. I've tested it and it works, so I'm hoping to just have the rest of the mechanics updated, and hopefully by the end of the next video the email and the input system will work and I can start putting together visuals, do some 3D modeling for the objects, and then just start piecing together some particle animation as well as the sort of story elements to implement. Obviously the actual physical objects will make up the story elements because it's environmental storytelling, as mentioned. 2 around correct connection because of the mirror, and obviously like the retro style interface from the email system that will assist the player as well. So I'm hoping all this will sort of collide together and actually build a playable and suitable artifact for the game I intended to make, and in that respect answering the research questions. So thank you for watching, and obviously you'll catch up in the next video that you see, and hopefully we'll be after that milestone and getting all the mechanics done and moving on to actually putting some more polishing together. So thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.